Hello and welcome back to Run Fast, Lift Heavy. Today I'm joined by James Hobart. James, thank you very much for taking the time to come on today.
Yeah, Phoebe, thanks for making the time. I'm happy to be here.
No problem at all. So before we get into it, I've got a few warm questions to ask you. The first of which being, do you prefer running fast or lifting heavy?
Oh, I would say I prefer running fast, even though I'm probably better at lifting. I just want to be a better runner, so I'll say that I prefer running fast.
hmm Good answer. What's your favorite CrossFit benchmark workout?
Oh boy. My favorite CrossFit benchmark workout, I think is oh gosh, it's probably Helen, which is very simple. It's 3 rounds for time, 400-meter run, 21 pull-ups, and then 12 kettlebell swings. And what's interesting about this, it was one of the first like CrossFit workouts I did, but at the time, I did that workout like a traditional, I don't know, gym session workout. Like I went in, I was actually at a gym in I was actually at a gym just outside of Oxford, England, when I was over there studying for a little while. We did like a summer thing in college, and it was a Les Mills training center. And I asked the guy if I could kind of come in and do my own thing. And at that time, I didn't really understand CrossFit. And like the way I did Helen is like I went and did my 400-meter run, and then I went and got some water, and I
Yeah.
rested, and I talked to some people in the gym, and then I went and did 21 pull-ups, and then I did the same thing. And like my first Helen, I think, took me 27 minutes. I didn't understand that for time meant like try and be as fast as possible. I just thought it meant
Mm,
like record your time, whatever it was. But anyway, yeah, I
yeah.
think Helen is one of my favorite benchmarks.
Yeah, I was the exact same. I just misunderstood like intensity. So if it was, an AMRAP 10, I'll just go, okay, I'll just do 2 rounds,
Yep.
however many rounds, but I'll just talk to my friends and pick up the bar and then drop it. And yeah, it's a good learning curve. Okay, next question, which book has had the biggest influence on your life?
Oh boy. Um, this is oh gosh, I don't know. There was this book, I want to make a joke. There's this book I read as a kid, The Phantom Tollbooth, which is a children's story. And I think I read that like
Mhm.
7 times, but that probably didn't have like a real impactful influence. There was a book I read, this was probably in the last 10 years, and the book is called Hunger. It was by an author in the US. Her name's Roxane Gay, and she's a really compelling, amazing author. And this story is about her life and her childhood trauma and her struggle with her weight and eating and her struggle with feeling kind of just comfortable in her own body. And it was a
Mhm.
really impactful book because I think when you get involved in fitness and you become a trainer, you do it for the best intentions. I think you want to help people improve their lives through fitness, but I also think you get to a point sometimes where you feel like you have all the answers for somebody. You're like, you've seen things work for you or someone else, and you're like, well, if you're overweight, great, I'll just teach you how to eat better, and I'll teach you how to work out.
Mhm.
Or if you're weak, or if you're not comfortable in your body, like I have all the answers. And
Yeah.
I think it's also a really dangerous place to be. But anyway, reading this book really helped me kind of self-reflect on what empathy is, what I was doing that was empathetic, what I was not doing that was not empathetic, and really just try and think about what is life like from another person's perspective. And the book it's harsh. It's not necessarily a happy story, but for me, for some odd reason, it was really powerful. And it was because it was a story that like I've never had to deal with. And the things that
Mm.
she deals with and talks about in the book, like I've never had any of those struggles or difficulties. So it was really eye opening for me. The book was called Hunger. Really interesting. Recommend it to anyone who wants to read it with an open mind. That probably isn't the typical recommendation. Like it's not a self help
Mm.
whatever book, but it was a really powerful story for me.
Yeah,
Super
great
powerful.
answer. I'm gonna add that to the list, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If you could program a birthday WOD for yourself, which three movements would you put in it and why?
A birthday workout for myself. Yeah. I would probably program pull-ups. I love pull-ups or bar
hmm
muscle-ups. I like the feeling that you get with a kipping gymnastic movement, kind of almost
Yeah.
flying through the air.
hmm
I would program probably some type of squatting. So let's say single leg squats, So I'd say 10 pull-ups, 10 chest to bar pull-ups, 20 single leg squats, and then, oh gosh, probably something like 15 handstand push-ups. So something that's going to look like a Cindy or a Mary, but higher skill, because I'm good at higher skill workouts. And then probably like a 20-minute AMRAP, because I love 20-minute workouts. Something like that. Yeah.
Cool. And then final question. This is actually from my previous guest. Do you prefer tea or coffee? I think I know the answer based on
Well,
what
I
you're
will say
drinking
this.
now.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I like the caffeine from coffee better because there's more caffeine in coffee. I maybe have had one cup of coffee in my life, and I don't think I've ever had a hot cup of coffee. I think coffee tastes terrible. And people who drink it regularly and drink it hot, I think they're the toughest human beings on earth. So honestly, if I prefer the flavor of almost any and all teas. And then there's a much more calming, therapeutic association with tea for me. So I prefer tea, but I'm addicted to caffeine is probably the answer.
Do you like English tea, like English breakfast tea with a splash of cold milk?
Yeah, so no milk for me just because dairy, I love dairy, but it crushes me. But yeah, I like English breakfast tea. I like most herbal teas and flavored teas. So yeah.
Cool.
I
So
love tea.
how did you get into CrossFit, James? Can you remember what your first workout was and how you got involved with the sport?
I don't remember like what my first exact CrossFit workout was, because at that time, a friend of mine and I've told this story a couple times, we were really into the whole kettlebell thing. Like at this time, sort of like in training culture in the US, like there was Pavel Tussolini was really popular, and there was a lot of like just kettlebells were becoming more and more popular in terms of training and representative of functional training. And I had a friend who was really into that, and we started doing that. And I really enjoyed that. I liked the idea, and because I never really liked working out, I liked sports. If you were outside, if you were with other people, like I loved that. And so to me, to go into a gym and do regular gym stuff was of no interest. And so anyway, long story short, kettlebells. And then at this time, there was this movie that came out. And I don't know how old you are, but it was the 300, and it was this like the Zack Snyder stylized story of the Spartans battling the Persian army. Anyway, the guy who trained, you saw that movie as a teenager or young kid, and you looked at it, you're like, I want to look like those dudes. And then you forget like they're makeup, they're actors. But they were training with a fellow by the name of Mark Twight, who ran this website called Jim Jones. And I found out that Mark Twight who trained these guys. And so I started going to his website. And early on, Mark Twight, who's a really prolific climber and mountaineer, had trained and worked with Coach Greg Glassman. And so through that site, I found the CrossFit.com site. And I don't remember my first workout, but I imagine it was something we pulled from CrossFit.com probably in 2006 or 2007, probably 2007. But I do have like vivid memories of doing all the movements poorly. Like I remember all of my starfish cleans. I remember trying to get like the kip of a kipping pull up. I remember all of that. Like I remember moving like a soup sandwich. But I don't remember my exact same workout. So the short story is I found it on the internet back in 07. I still remember the day they posted like a PDF. It was like looked like they made it in like Microsoft Paint for the 2007 CrossFit Games. Like I remember when that post went up. So yeah, I can't remember my first workout though.
So then, were you training out of a CrossFit box? You followed the doc workouts just at a Globo gym?
Yeah. And when did you start CrossFit?
Well, I started before the pandemic.
Okay.
When I was so my first workout, I went to university. This was 2018. I was a swimmer before this, so I thought, well, I'm fit. This will be easy. And then there was a 400-meter run in the warm up, and it just completely put me off. So then I think I did a week and then didn't come back. And then I rejoined about a month. It was February 2020, which wasn't a good time to join a CrossFit gym because we went into lockdown in the UK. But I was able to borrow equipment and do some home workouts. And they did some Zoom classes, and then really started like April 2021. and that's when I got my level 1, and then just
Okay.
went in head first from there.
Oh, cool. Who's your flow master at your level 1? Do you remember who you had there?
So mine was the online level 1. I can't
Oh,
remember his
cool.
name, but it was a great group of people.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Yes, I mean, it was so different, right? So it's like you started in 18, and then 2021, you took your level 1. And so it's like at this point, right, we have over 10,000 CrossFit affiliates worldwide. And I think when I started, and this isn't to like make myself sound like one of those old geezers who's like back in my day, but I think at that time it was like there were probably less than 500 affiliates worldwide when I
Yeah.
started. So everything we were doing, we were going into like the local fitness center, or we were just trying to find our own equipment and doing it like at our homes. So everything was just pulling it off the internet. And then yeah, I don't think I went into my first affiliate until late in 2008, really.
hmm
And that's when I went out to take my level 1, and that was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, here in the States. And there was a gym called Hyperfit. So yeah, everything we were doing was just with our own equipment. We would go into a local fitness center and get screamed at by the people who ran that. Because we would see on the CrossFit.com videos, you see everyone. It started in California, so all the guys and gals in these videos are wearing things like board shorts, and they're doing it barefoot, or they're like in bathing suits. So that's like what we went out and did. Is like I went out. I never surfed. I went out and bought board shorts, and you'd go into the gym and you'd take your shoes off in your board shorts, and everyone would think you were insane. But like that's what you saw on the internet, and that's how you had to do CrossFit, like in my head. So yeah, everything was in a garage or kind of like just not in an affiliate, which was really interesting.
So at what
Yeah.
point did your training go from training to look and feel good versus training to be a competitor in the sport?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for me, it was a really interesting journey because I found CrossFit. I liked CrossFit. I liked the community aspect of it. I really liked the idea that it, included higher skill movements. So there was sort of this kind of, you progress through the belts, right? Like so you had to continually up your skills and learn new skills in order to do it well. And I really loved that. And I never really had any intention of competing in CrossFit. I really liked the coaching and teaching aspect of it at first. And once I got into it, that's kind of where I had my sights set, was on coaching and teaching. And I had moved down to Boston in Massachusetts to continue some schooling. And at that time, there was a gym, CrossFit Boston, and I started going there just to, like work out and just kind of clear my head, getting away from classes. And I started coaching there. And then a friend of mine who I met at the time kind of said like, "Hey, you're pretty fit. I think you'd be good at competing." And so I really just, the ball kind of just started rolling. I went to a local competition, did fairly well. And then that year in 2009, so we're way back at this point, there was, they had like I forgot what they called it then, it was like the East Coast semifinal or sanctional or whatever. It was before this
hmm
entire open qualifying process. And I went and competed and I won. And then that was the first year I went to the games. So I would say like,
hmm
and then after that games in 2009, I showed up at the games woefully underprepared, did terrible. I got cut after the second event. And it was really after that I sort of changed my sights and was like, hey, I felt really bad and guilty. And I was like, I want to go back, do that again, but better. And then I really started training to compete, and then with a goal to try and go to the games and be as successful as I could in CrossFit. So I would say, how did I get into competing? By dumb luck. I had no intention or desire to. It was really just a friend who said, hey, try this. I think you'll be okay at it. And I think the only thing that made me good at it is because I could do the butterfly kipping pull up. And that helped me in some workouts we had because no one was really doing it at that time. There were a couple people, but yeah, it's really, I wish it was more exciting than that, or I had some like lifelong dream. A little bit of right place, right time, and a little bit of grit, I guess.
Well, I guess because I mean, when you started competing, there were few people that actually made it their profession. A lot of people were coaching along the side, but now
Yeah.
these are professional athletes who are paid to compete. And I mean, obviously the prize money's gone up, but they're
Oh
sponsored.
yeah.
So a lot of the CrossFit Games athletes now can make a living just out of competing, but that was different. If I'm not wrong in in your time when you first started?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and it's evolved. I mean, when it first started, and even from the competition aspect of it, I believe the first CrossFit Games in 2007 was 2 or 3 days, and it was basically like one event each day for 3 days. It was
Hmm.
it was a row, push jerk, pull up triplet, and then there was the CrossFit total, and then there was a 5K run. And so that time, even the competition side of it was very much based on the core methodology of like one workout a day. You're going to warm up, workout, cool down, 5 to 6 times a week. And the competition has evolved significantly. And I would say, even from my perspective, when I first started, I was probably working out more than the average gym goer. I was
Hmm.
definitely spending more time in the gym because I worked in a gym, but that was when I even started competing. When I finished competing, it essentially was a full-time job. And I would say
Hmm.
there were even things, I was still working as a coach when I was still competing. And athletes now who are competing, that's the joke I always make if someone says to me like, "Hey, do you have any advice? I want to become a CrossFit Games athlete." And I'm like, "Cool, what do you do?" And they're like, "Well, I work in data analytics and I work 40 hours a week." And I'm like, "Awesome, quit your
Hmm.
job."
Yeah.
It, and it truly is a full-time job for some of these most successful athletes. And what's cool too is that now some of these, I never had dreams of making it a career to the extent where it was going to provide a lifestyle for me. But some of these athletes, have really carved out for themselves an awesome quality of life and lifestyle, even during their competing career, because of the amount of money in the sport now and sponsorships and how much it's grown. So, yeah, from when I first started, you could just kind of be a weekend warrior. And now, if you're not 100% fully committed, I think it's very hard to make your way into that world, just like any
Mm.
other sport.
Yeah, I mean, so we spoke about the involvement of the sport, and I think it's really cool to look back on what the fittest on earth were doing in 2010 versus 2021. Back in like 2010, if you could snatch your body weight, it was so cool. Or, a sub 3 minute Fran, or the thought of doing a sub 5 minute mile and a 500-pound back squat in the same day. But now this is commonplace by most of the people at the games. But
Yeah.
like, is there any limit to where fitness can go? And which part of fitness do you think will be evolving, sooner?
Oh, I imagine there's a limit.
Hmm.
Um, but I will say I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
It's like I thought we had seen the peak of athletes getting strong and being able to get, as strong as you possibly could doing a GPP program like CrossFit. And I will say this, like, I think CrossFit Games athletes, no, I think CrossFit Games athletes definitely specialize towards some ends of their fitness. That is to say, I think they kind of practice certain skills or modalities more than someone who's just showing up regularly to a CrossFit gym. But they are,
Hmm.
CrossFit Games athletes are still doing constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity, the core definition of CrossFit. But I don't know where the limit is. I was just talking about this with a friend. Like, it's amazing to me. We were talking about last year's, there was a workout at the games. I don't know if you remember, but there was like, you had to do like a sprint lap and then you'd come in and do a single clean. And the
Mm.
weights that the athletes were lifting in this workout, I think really kind of broke the mold and showed spectators like, hey, we all know, and this is the cool part about CrossFit, we all know you guys could go home and you could go do a lap around the building and you could come in and do a clean. But the weights that these athletes are doing, I think, was like they are light years ahead of everybody else in terms of combining all of the modalities of fitness. So, um, I don't know what the limit is. I mean, Sam Briggs, right? So Sam Briggs, 40 years old, supposedly retired from CrossFit. I don't ultimately know what her plans are, but she was 40 years old, competing with some athletes who are close to half her age. And I think she still finished top 10 in the recent qualifier. I mean, she's
Mm.
absolutely amazing. And if you were to ask somebody, 5, 10 years ago, I think there was, in our heart of hearts, we wanted to believe that that person existed, but now we have evidence of it. So I don't know where the limit is. I don't think we've quite found it yet. Um, definitely with weightlifting, I think we're getting closer. I think the place where there's still most room for athletes to grow is in the demonstration of gymnastic skill, and we're starting
Mhm.
to knock on that door. They had that workout at the games last year where they did the
Freestanding.
freestanding, exactly, the
Yeah.
freestanding handstand push-up. Um, so I think there's still a lot of space for the athletes to grow there. And I think when they did the 2K row,
Mhm.
and then into the marathon row again, I think Sam Briggs, I think she basically either came close to or like set a record not only in CrossFit but in the concept to rowing erg world, for
Mm.
her age group and as a female. So wow, I don't know. It's shocking to me, to see how they've continued to push the sport, and even at the local level. I mean, like inside of affiliates, if you look around, I see this. I've been doing this for 15 years. The athletes who show up to my gym, I think, display levels of fitness now where they are fitter than most people on the planet. Um,
Mhm.
and they're just your everyday moms and dads who go to a job and work out once a day. So it's really incredible, to see that. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a cool answer where it was like, hey, someone's going to clean 500 pounds. I don't know.
Mm.
We're not. I don't think we're quite there yet, though, in terms of what the limit of fitness is. We're still seeing it, especially with the younger athletes now.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I mean, the men's champ now just is like 22, 23, and then you've got the Mal O'Briens, the Emma Carries, who last year was 17 years old. And I remember it being really humbling because I was watching the clean event that you were talking about where they had to do the run, and my
Hmm.
clean PB was like the second bar on the first iteration of the event
Yeah.
because they then did the same thing but like heavier. I remember being like, how are these like girls doing this? It's unbelievable. It's so cool to watch.
Yeah, it's incredible. And even for the women's clean weight, I think are good clean weights. If you're just a
Mm,
guy showing up to the gym, I mean, they've just
yeah.
totally destroyed the mold of this perception of strength. Yeah, and like you said, with the 17-year-old athletes, I remember what I was like and and I've never been a big guy, what I was like when I was doing at 17, and I don't think I could have done anything that these young women are doing now, and it's absolutely mind blowing to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So in 2015 and 16, you were on Team CrossFit Mayhem,
Yep.
and you were training at the barn. What did a day in your life look like then? How many sessions were you doing per day? Were the
Yeah.
team doing the sessions together? Like, just talk to me about what it was like.
It was funny. I was actually just talking. I was just texting Rich this morning, and we were laughing about the fact of like, if you look at Mayhem now and like what they've created down there and how much it's evolved. We were laughing about the fact that like we started off in his garage. At this time, it was a very small garage, um, and then his dad's barn. And we were laughing about the fact that there were these small spaces, and we would pack a ton of athletes in there, and it was sweaty, and everybody's doing all this stuff. We were just saying how it was a miracle that like no one lost their head to like a
Hmm.
flying barbell or someone doing a handstand walk on a slippery concrete floor. Um, but it really, I think one of the biggest things is, and I think I learned this from Rich, and I think this is definitely something Rich spearheaded in the sport of CrossFit, is that if you had enough, he kind of looked at it as, where is the limit to the amount of work that I can do in training? I think he was really one of the first athletes who started looking at training as, okay, here's the basic CrossFit methodology, here's the basic prescription, here are the foundational skills I need. But what happens if I start to do more than that? All right. You
Hmm.
said, hey, one workout a day is really effective. What happens if I do two? What happens if I do two and then I rest and I do two more in the afternoon? And I think, in his experimentation with that, he, for athletes, found something really interesting and very effective for athletes, and something that I think forever changed the sport. And he wasn't the only one who did it. I think Jason Kleep at the time, there were a handful of athletes kind of pushing that spearhead. But it was a full-time job. I mean,
Hmm.
we weren't very good about getting up early. I'll tell you that. We would sleep in late, and then we would go to the gym and we would kind of muck about a little bit, and we would warm up, and we would do some sort of. Usually, the mornings were like some sort of lifting or skill or interval style training. And then we would rest and we would go get some food or go jump in, his cousin's pool, or, jump in the lake to cool off. And then we would get ready to do another session in the afternoon. And then we would take a break and we would eat. And then we would do another session at night. And then, twice a week we were getting body work, and twice a week we were going to the track, and twice a week we were swimming. So we always felt like it was kind of haphazard, but there was a lot. It was full days. It was a full-time commitment to it. And I still think to this day, Mayhem, I think, everybody always asks, like, what's the Mayhem difference? And I think it's just like, no, you're not working like them. I don't think there are as many teams out there who treat it as a full-time job like they do. And what was super cool about Cookeville, Tennessee, and still now, I imagine, was like the rest of the community was so supportive of the training. So it was like, we would finish a day of training and everyone was like, oh, well, we're all going over to so-and-so's house to eat tonight. Or, like, this is going on. So, these people take care of you. Or we know this person who's a body worker, so they can help out the team. I mean, they really created this entire community, and not just about the exercise, but it was an entire community that was interested in and built to foster the growth of fitness, and for the particular reason of winning the CrossFit Games, whether it was team or individual. And that was probably one of the strongest differences down there, is that even when you left the walls of the gym, there were still people supportive of the project. And that was something I think that, Rich did a lot to foster down there, and everyone else involved. I mean, his parents put up with, just a lot, his dad, the amount of destruction we caused up at his dad's barn in his property. I don't know how anyone would put up with that, dropping barbells into the ground, making noise all hours into the night and day, and just random people showing up to work out. So, it's not just about the training, it was about the community and the environment that was created around the training. Imagine an Olympic training center that had the footprint of an entire city, and that's kind of what it was like down in Cookeville, which was really cool. One of my other teammates, like Matt Hewitt, coached at the local university, Tennessee Tech, and it was like, if we didn't want to work out at the barn, we'd go to Tennessee Tech and use the college facilities there. And it was very cool. But yeah, probably the easiest way to describe it for everyone thinking about it, it was very much like a full-time job.
I do think that the advent of the training camps has made it easier to professionalize the sport, because in these camps there's typically like a manager, or there's people doing body work on site. You've got all your coaches' eyes on the whole time. But equally, I was thinking, if I were an athlete, right, at the CrossFit Games, and I was training alongside one of my competitors, I think I would overthink small things like, is the coach like wanting to help them more so she wins, not me? And I think that, because Matt Fraser and Tia Toomey famously trained together, and then they just accelerated their careers by forging that relationship. But do you think that CrossFit Mayhem and the barn has led to the creation of other camps in the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. It has led to the creation of others. And I particularly think it's necessary for the team environment. And again, I don't think it's just about the fitness. It's like, if you and I, Phoebe, have done 500 workouts together, it's like, I know when you get tired, how many pull-ups I can typically do when I'm fresh, versus how much I struggle with handstand walking after rowing versus running. Like, you just learn so much about each other. There are certain things that just become automatic that really allow you to accelerate in a team format. They talk so much about communication inside of the team workouts. Well, what if you had a team who basically didn't have to communicate certain things because they just know what happens? And I think that was the camp format is really exceptional for that. Personally, and I've always been really impressed by like what Matt does. As he trained, I felt like a fair amount by himself, or like Pat Vellner, any of the athletes who train on their own. I've always been really impressed about that, because what drew me to CrossFit, competing, coaching, being in class, was the group aspect of it. Like, I really didn't like training on my own. It was not as fun for me. So I've always been super impressed in that. The other thing is, I don't know if you've seen anybody really replicate the success of the sort of training camp model like you have in Tennessee. And there's probably some things particular to Tennessee that really allows them to do what they do well, compared to some of the other places. So I haven't seen anyone do it quite like them yet. And, not to pat them on the back too much, but I think they qualify, they had like 100+ athletes, competing across
Yeah.
semifinals and quarterfinals. And I'm sure I don't remember how many they had qualified, but they're not doing poorly.
Mm.
So
Speaking of the connection between team members, there was a great moment at the 2021 games where it was in the thruster wall walk event, and you see Mayhem like approaching the team that are winning. I forget who are in the lead, and they just look at each other and they just go, right, okay, we're going to do 7. They just bash them out unbroken, but training so close with each other would like allow each other to know that they've got that 7 reps in the tank and they can go for it, and they have the confidence in each other to achieve those reps.
yeah,
That was a great moment of the game. I think that was my highlight of the game. It was fascinating.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. I had a friend recently ask me, like, what are your top 10 games workouts? And I always think of workouts not as like, what is the structure, the rep scheme, or the difficulty. I'm like, what was the moment that happened in that workout that sort of was like stuck out to me? And yeah, that was definitely one that year. And yeah, a lot of that just comes from, like you said, just being together on a team a lot. And I think there's something so very important to that. And I do think Mayhem still has the edge there against a lot of other teams. They clearly do. I know everyone loves an underdog, but it's much harder to be a repeat champion than I think it is statistically to be an underdog. I don't know. There's probably some math people out there who hate that I said that, but I think that's the case. So I want them to win again.
Yeah.
I also don't think it'll be such a long time before we see anything quite like that in the sport of CrossFit.
Yeah.
So I think it's super exciting.
What do you think about the super teams? Annie Thorisdottir's got her CrossFit Reykjavik Scheme. Do you think it increases or decreases the validity of the team competition?
I do think it increases it. And the reason I think it increases it is because, like, a name like Annie's, who's arguably top 3 best all-time female individuals, and everybody else on that team, Khan and Tola and Lauren Fisher, all incredible athletes. I think it just draws more attention to the team competition. And obviously I have a huge soft spot for the team competition. What I'm hoping happens, as much as I love seeing like the old favorites, Rich has got to be like 75 years old now, and he's competed for like 20 years. As much as I love seeing those old favorites, what I'm hoping is like the Mayhems and what Annie is doing with her team. I'm hoping I'm waiting for that new, fresh team of like 20-year-olds, who all move to one spot and create some competitive team. Like, I'm really excited to see the next generation of the sport. So it's like, wow, they are new faces. They might not be as familiar or comfortable. It's like when I see the Mal O'Briens or that young guy, Tudor Magda, who qualified for the games, who I think is like 19 or 20 as well. That's super exciting for me, because it's like I'm also just a fan and a lover of the history of the sport, and that just shows me how far it's come and that it's going to continue to grow. So what I do think is that, yes, it brings more attention, and I so hope very much it also kind of lights a fire underneath everybody else's ass to like, let's try and go beat these old farts, and create something really spectacular. So that's, fingers crossed, that's what I hope happens.
And I mean, I think I know what the answer might be, but who do you think is going to win the team division this year?
I think Mayhem will win. Yeah. I think in Samuel and just their team, and Rich and his competitiveness, and the ladies that they have there, are so fit. And like I said, I think it's hard for anyone else to replicate the camaraderie. Everyone's working hard. I get that. But just the time spent together with Mayhem, their ability to know what needs to go into the process to win. I think once you win, it's not like you see the world, differently. Like all of a sudden, it's like, you're Neo in the Matrix and you see all the code and you understand it. That's another really dated reference. But maybe not, because they came out with a new movie. But anyway, I think once you win, you start to understand, like, what are the things I need to keep doing in order to do that again? as well as if you're a really excellent competitor, as well as, okay, I won that time, but man, here's where people were nipping at my heels, so let's go just clean this stuff out. Whereas if you finish the games in last place, you're just like, I have to work on everything. Nothing went well, so it's a much harder starting place, I think.
Yeah. Moving on to your role as the CrossFit seminar staff, how did you get involved in this position?
Yeah, Phoebe, I wish I had some really beautiful, it was just hard work and grit, and this ambition of a dream. It was a lot of right place and right time again. I was super fortunate to be surrounded by mentors and people who were willing to spend a little bit more time talking with me and sharing with me than they probably should have, given my current reputation and ability. But I was at CrossFit Boston, going to school down in the city, and there were coaches there. John Gilson was one of the coaches. Eva Claire Sinkowski was one of the coaches. Neil Thompson was the owner of CrossFit Boston. And they had all had some level of interaction or role with CrossFit seminar staff team at that time. So I was I was able to watch, some of the best coaches at the world at that time in CrossFit and learn from them. And when I went to my level one, I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I came into this, I was an English and philosophy major. So the only thing I was good at was reading and spending my parents' money. I had no other skills outside of those things. I had no intention to be involved in fitness. I just really fell in love with what teaching fitness to other people did for your life, not just your body, but how it changed things outside of the gym. I really fell in love with that, and I was very lucky to be around a ton of mentors and people, like I said at the time, who were able to share a lot with me. So that introduction to Eva Claire and John and Neil and being in Boston, which was one of the few gyms at the time where they were hosting CrossFit level 1s and level 2s, allowed me to get in touch with more of the seminar staff. I would go on to meet Dave Castro at the 2010 East Coast semifinal or regional or whatever it was at the time. And he and I hit it off. And, through meeting that team, they were willing to give me an opportunity to go through the application and internship process for seminar staff. And I was very fortunate enough to, again, have some really great trainers and mentors through that process. One of them being Joe Alexander, who's a longtime seminar staff flow master. He also came from the team guys, the Navy background, similar to what Dave came from. And he was one of the flow masters who I spent a lot of time working with early on. And now he's a seminar staff manager. And I made my way through the internship and didn't screw it up. So it was a lot of that. I was just smitten with the teaching and coaching process, and so gratefully fortunate to just have people who at that time were really excellent at it and in the right positions. And I was also persistent and pesky enough just to kind of keep saying, teach me more. And that was super beneficial to me. I would say that my greatest superpower is my willingness to find interesting people and ask them to teach me how they do what they did. So I guess my greatest superpower is riding other people's coattails, but I'm very thankful for it.
That's selfishly a big reason why I started the podcast. I get to interview really, really cool people that I never would have had the opportunity to speak to in real life. And it's really cool to network and get to know people's stories and ask questions that I've always wanted to know. So it's I feel very lucky to get to talk to you and a lot of my other guests.
Oh, I super appreciate you saying that, because when you shot me an email, I looked at your list of guests. I'm like, oh man, I better really bring it. I was like, I don't know what I have to offer, but I'm grateful to be here. Yeah, it is. It's true. I mean, if you, you always, a friend of mine once said to me, he basically said something to the extent of like, you can always learn from an experience that's not your own. And I've just tried to embrace that like crazy over the last 15 years I've been here, because you also meet people inside of CrossFit and you'll learn stuff from them that has nothing to do with fitness, because it just draws in so many interesting and different people. Yeah. So that's how I got there.
I want to know how you would market CrossFit to a person who out of the group class setting, and also who feels like they're at a stage in their life where they're quite unfit, possibly overweight, potentially haven't exercised for a while, because a lot of people might see the CrossFit Games or the documentaries and think there is no way in hell I'm going to be able to do a pull-up or a handstand push-up or even run 400 meters, as was my case after a year of drinking and partying at university. So what would you say to someone who's thought about, you know, joining their local affiliate but is put off by it?
Yeah, this is a challenging question, especially the question of actually getting people to the affiliate. When I was coaching at an affiliate, what I would do with new people who are coming in is, and we were very fortunate to have resources to do this, is I would ask them two questions. I would say, well, really, one question was, are you comfortable with group classes?
Mm-hmm.
And this is assuming they had never done CrossFit before. So maybe that's the first question. Have you done CrossFit? No. Okay. Are you comfortable with group classes? Yes. The next thing I would tell them is say, okay, I'm going to be your caddy. I'm going to be your shadow. You're going to take class. Any question at all you have, I'll be there. Where is the barbell? What is a push press? What is this kind of stuff? I would kind of be their shadow and caddy. And there was a lot of success to that, because I think they learn very quickly that, one, a lot of people come in and they're very scared to do it because they're worried what everyone else is going to think of them. And that's very human. Like, it's totally normal even. But then when you get into the workout, you realize everyone else is just as horrified to make their own way through the workout. They have no resources to worry about anyone else. And then it also just gives them some comfort and comfortability of just navigating kind of like our specific lingo and some of the movements. Now, if they said to me, I'm not comfortable with group classes, I'd say, great, we'll schedule some one-on-ones. But all I want you to do is let's watch 10 minutes of the class together. And I just want you to tell me what you see. And typically when that would happen, we'd sit down and watch the class together. They would see themselves in somebody. You'd see a diverse group of people. You'd see, again, what they would see is they wouldn't see people like doing the workout and looking over and judging somebody else. They saw people very much focused on their own survival. But there's comfort in that, right? Because then you realize, like, no one's judging you. They're all focused on their own thing. And I think that made it a lot more acceptable for people to get into classes. So I think if I was to try and market it to them, I would try and continually show people a lot of what I see daily in an affiliate. I'm at my friend's affiliate right now visiting back home in Boston, CrossFit Tilt. We took class last night. I would try to show them just the diverse group of people you see in the gym, doing the same workouts, though slightly differently, focused on themselves. I think that's a really great place to start. One of the things I really always loved about the old CrossFit Journal, and sorry, Phoebe, I'm going off on a real tangent here, but was just what I loved about the old CrossFit Journal were just all the unique stories of all of the different lifestyles and capabilities that benefited, made their way to, found success, had struggle, and benefited from CrossFit. I mean, I will say to this day, that's still my favorite part of doing this, is the fact that it's not just meant for the Mayhems or the Justin Medeiros or the Mal O'Briens or the Tia Claire Toomeys. Like, it really is something that can be adaptable to everyone. And that's what I absolutely love about it. So I think continually showing them that, the accessibility of it. So I don't know if that gives you a perfect answer. I'm not a marketing expert. Like I said, I'm an English and philosophy major, which is devastating. Philosophy majors probably be every marketer's nightmare. But just sharing those, showing similar stories just of what actually goes on inside an affiliate, I think is super powerful, because there's probably some people out there like you who came from a sports specific background, and you had this dominance in your sport, but then you came into CrossFit and it's quite challenging and humbling, and to be able to share and identify with those stories, I think is quite special.
What's really cool about CrossFit is that on your first class, you walk in, hands in pockets, head down, not really making eye contact. And then after the hour class, you've got, your friends and people on Facebook, and you've arranged to go for coffee, and you're talking about when you're booked in for the next class. It's really, really special. And I've noticed that and appreciated it so much more recently, because I've been training out of a commercial gym just while I've moved house, and I'm finding my feet with where I want to train in my new city. And in the commercial gyms, in between sets, people are just on their phones, and they don't make eye contact, and it feels really, really off-putting. and I don't feel the urge to go back and train as much as I do when I'm at my local box.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad to hear you say that. And I hear that story so much. And yeah, the question is like,
Mm,
how do we get that message out there that happens?
mm,
You know, yeah, that's just so spot on. And even on days where I'm just like having a cruddy day and I go into the gym, there's just, you know, there's someone else who doesn't even work there. You know, there's always someone's like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You know, how's
mm,
so and so? Yeah, that camaraderie that comes out of it is quite special, and maybe even similar to what you experienced, you know, with your fellow athletes when you were swimming, right? Like there's still some of
mhm.
that camaraderie now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So, James, to finish off, I would like you to come up with a question for my next guest.
Oh,
Most of them have been related to food recently, but
I know. I was
it could be
just thinking
anything
of
at
food.
all.
I was just thinking of food one because I'm obsessed with ramen. Okay, I'll share one that someone shared with me. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Wow. What's your answer?
I honestly think the one would be easier, even though it's so big. I feel like
Yeah.
everyone in their head is like, "Oh, I would just kick all the mini horses," but 100 is a lot. And I feel
Mm,
like at one point they would just overpower you. You know, it's sort of like,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. What would you
Yeah.
pick?
I think I'd go for the horse-sized duck as well, but the
Yeah,
one thing that I'd be wary of would be the beak because that'd be very strong. It'd be like a crocodile's strength.
super strong. Yeah, it would probably like chip through concrete. And the other thing I worry about too is like their quacks are pretty loud when they're small. So if you had something that
Mm,
big and it quacked, like
yeah.
it might really
Sorry,
mess
let
like
me
a
just
like
let
a
me just plug my headphones in while we fight.
yeah. But I
Well,
think you'd be
yeah,
able to outmaneuver it. So
well, thank you very much for taking the time to come on. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
great place to start is the old Instagram. I like to try and chat with people. I'm horrific at DMing. I just think I'm slowly turning into an old man. But at James Hobart is a great place to start. And if you're ever out in the Denver, Colorado area and want to work out and shoot me a DM, happy. My garage gym is open, and I also go to an affiliate out there, CrossFit Mafia, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you're ever in the area, let me know. Yeah, Phoebe, thank you so much. This was an awesome surprise, and it was great to meet you.
No worries. Thank you.